Hello, and welcome back to Team 39th Rhapsody. I'll be your host for today. As always, I am Tanishu, and today we'll be going over my Viamance Bruce deck profile. Funny story, I recorded this deck profile 3 times, and then I scrapped it because I realized that I wasn't showing the right deck. But anyways, this is the new Bruce, the Viamance Bruce. He allows us to final rush on turn 3, but also has his own little drawbacks that come with it. So let's talk about this new and improved build. Starting off with the ride line, we play the old Bruce ride line, replacing grade 3 Bruce with the new Viamance Bruce. So of course we start with our starter, Diablos Innocent Matt, go into Bad Steve, call Matt, soul charge 1, go into Richard, soul charge Matt, and draw 1, and then Bruce. But as it is until your opponent's next turn, old cards such as Stephanie, which give plus 5k, become really helpful as they can make Bruce an 18k Vanguard on your opponent's turn. However, the second part of this skill is if your opponent's Vanguard is grade 3 or greater, you Final Burst. Final Burst is the new keyword and counts as Final Rush. This means that when you are Final Burst, you are, yes, still Final Rush. His second skill is Auto when this unit attacks. If you are Final Burst, Counterblast 1, choose a column, stand all your rear guards with Diablos and their card names in that column, and they get plus 5k until the end of the turn. This changes Bruce from a 5 attack deck into a 4 attack deck. However, if you restand the whole column, they will get plus 10k in total. This is actually interesting as Soul has become a different resource, not required for his skill, and Counterblast has become a required resource. So, while New Bruce doesn't use Soul and only makes 4 attacks, he is tankier and a bit quicker, which is why he's still fun to play. Moving on to grade 3s, we of course play 3 of Viamance Bruce as we want to Persona Ride, as in this deck, we really need to kill our opponents as fast and as quick as possible, and having that Persona Ride really pushes our numbers forward. Next up, we play 3 Julian. While Julian does cost a CB, his skill, once per turn when this unit attacks a Vanguard, Counterblast 1, and this unit gets plus 2k until the end of turn for each card in your damage zone. And if you have a Vanguard and Bruce in your card name, soul charge 1 for every 2 cards in your damage zone, and choose up to the same number of cards soul charged by this effect and call them to an open rear. This means that the plus 2k, however much you get, will last until the end of turn. So if you're at 5, it'll make him plus 10k until the end of the turn, and then it only requires the Vanguard with Bruce's card name, so you can still use him with the new Viamance Bruce, and then also you soul charge 1 for every 2 cards in your damage zone, allowing you to only have to call down a Julian and maybe 1 more rear guard to make a column or a full field, just for 1 CB. This is why Julian is still a really useful card, and I would highly recommend playing him. Of course, there are also some funny attack combos we can do with a lot of CB and Ivanka, making more multi-attack in Bruce than just the 4 that he normally gets. Next up, we play 4 of the grade 2 Diablos Madonna Megan. Megan has a simple effective skill that when this unit attacks, if you're a Final Rush, this unit gets plus 10k at the end of the turn. Megan is nice as on your first grade 3 turn, where you will Final Rush, not Burst, you can get a free 20k attacker off Megan, and on your next grade 3 turn, when you're Final Burst, you can have Megan attack twice, and this means, since she keeps the 10k until the end of the turn on each attack, she'll be swinging 30k on her own on the second attack, making her a strong attacker. Next up, we play 3 of the new card, Diablos Jamia. So Jamia is good as continuous rear guardian circle. If you're a Final Burst, this unit gets plus 10k and plus 5k shield. This is active on your opponent's turn as well, so he's 20k on your opponent's turn and 10k intercept or guard from hand. Then, when this is placed on rear, if you have a Vanguard with Diablos Viamance Bruce, not restricted to Final Rush or Burst, Counterblast 1, Soul Charge 1, choose up to 1 grade 3 or less normal unit with Diablos and its card name from your soul and call it to an open rear. Jamia is like an alternative or mini Julian, having a similar skill, allowing you to build a board off your soul, still utilizing Counterblast however. So please know when to use Jamia and when not to use Jamia, as sometimes it might be better to just Julian. He is also included in a funny Julian combo as you can swing with Julian, swing with a rear boosted by Ivanka. If the attack hit, then you can counterblast for Ivanka to put the rear back. Then you can call him, and then you can counterblast to call another one. But it's a tiny bit unlikely you'd ever use this combo, although it will come up as this deck really wants to push fast and win fast. Next up, we have 3 Diablos boys Eden. So our boy from set 1 is back. He is skill. If you are final rush, this unit gets plus 5k, and if stood by a card effect, plus 1 crit. And then when this unit attack hits, counterblast 1, choose one of your opponent's rear guards and retire it. So Eden, on a final burst turn, when restood, will get a crit, giving him crit pressure, which is real and will scare your opponent into guarding him. And also, you can use him early game to pressure your opponent from calling early rears, as if they let the attack hit, you can use the 1 CB to retire a rear. However, please note that you should really think about when you use this, as CB is a real thing in this deck, and we do not play any of the new countercharger Greg. As for why do we not play Greg? Greg, if you become that reliant on CB, you become that reliant on Greg. And Greg only works in front row rear on final burst turns. He's also only an 18k attacker. If you are relying that much on Greg just for the counter charge and soul blast in a deck where as long as you wisely use your counter blasts, then you'll be actually wasting more counter blasts than making effectiveness out of them. For this reason, we choose to rather play smartly and wisely with our counter blasts than playing Greg and being forced into a Greg in the front row rear and reliance on counter charge. This being said, Greg is not a bad card, and if you do want to play him, I'd recommend just cutting down maybe 2 rears to put in 2 copies of Greg. Moving on to grade 1s, we play 4 Diablos girl Stephanie. So Stephanie says, continuous rear guard circle. If you're a final rush, all your other units in the same column as the unit get plus 5k until the end of turn. As it is continuous, if you're in final rush, this means that it activates on your opponent's turn 2, keeping Bruce at an 18k the entire time. We play 4 since we aren't playing Mabel. As I'm sure a lot of you will play Mabel over Stephanie and want to have a Mabel in the back row, as you see triple drive as a strength. While it is a bit high roll-y, and you become very reliant on the CB from Mabel. Having Bruce, Mabel is already 2 CB a turn, and being that reliant on CB means you'll burn through CB very fast, as you'll also be playing cards like Jamia and Eden, along with the fact that you will be reliant on Greg as a countercharger, which means you will likely have an 18k in your front row most turns. As Bruce can reach higher power columns than that and higher attack output than that, on more base consistency, we rely on Stephanie rather to make guarding a bit easier, and also forcing our opponent to have a retired target in the back row instead of the front row. For this reason, we play 4 Stephanie, as not only does she work behind Bruce, but she works behind any rears, giving the column plus 5k due to her skill. Next up, we play 3 Ivanka. As Ivanka says, when the attack this unit boosted hits a vanguard, if you're in final rush, counterblast 1 and put the rear guard this unit boosted on the bottom of your deck to draw a card and choose one of your units, and it gets plus 5k until the end of turn. While you won't be using Ivanka every turn or that often, she at least gives you something to put in the back row, and she also gives you the guarantee that if attack hits, you can counterblast 1 to draw a card and give a unit plus 5k. While this counterblast may seem expensive, as it is important to know that at least with this counterblast you are guaranteed to draw and power. Of course, as she can also do multi-attack combos with Julian, Ivanka, while a weird card and a very techie card, is actually pretty beneficial to the deck. Please note, when to use this CB is very important. Next up, we play 3 of the new grade 1 Diablos goes Trish. Trish, continuous rear guard guardian circle. If you're a final rush, this unit gets plus 5k power and plus 5k shield. Trish, although having a very simple skill, has a very good skill. The fact that she is a 10k guard from hand if you're a final rush, and the fact that she is a 13k booster makes her simple yet effective in this deck, as it is free. To round off our grade 1s, we play 3 of the effect PG and 1 Elementaria Sanctitude. As Sanctitude is an expensive card, if you just want to play 4 effect PGs, that's totally fine. However, Chronojet, the soon-to-come Messiah, and also a lot of other decks will rely on triple drive and that's why it's nice to have, as it becomes a 1-card PG. Moving on to our trigger lineup, we play 8 crit. You do not need effect crits in this deck. You can simply run the Diablos triggers, which I'll explain in a second, and normal crits, and it'll work completely fine, as the chance of you calling those crits are so low, and the likeliness is that you'll lose that game anyways. In terms of calling a Diablos trigger down, we play as many Diablos triggers as possible. This is because this allows us to, if we're very desperate, call down these triggers and still be able to final rush / final burst. For this reason, we play 4 of the Diablos crit, and those you will definitely want. Next up, we play 3 Diablos fronts, which are also effect fronts, and 1 Dark States OT. We play 3 Diablos fronts, as not only are they effect fronts giving us a 20k guard if your opponent is grade 3 or greater, but also having the Diablos in its card name. And then we play the Dark States OT, as although our rear guards have pressure, having the Dark States OT and hitting it allows us to push Bruce himself a little that more over the edge, making it threatening for our opponents. Finally, to round out this deck profile, we of course play 4 Diablo Seals. So I wanted to show a very simplified example of what you can do with Bruce, Julian, and Ivanka. Please note that you can do more or less with more CB or less CB, but you should be wise with how much you put into it. Assuming we're on final burst, you would only need a Julian in the front row, an Ivanka in the back row. For this example, I chose 4 CB, and then an attacker in the front row. In this case, I chose Megan, as she will be your most likely candidate, and as we do play a 4 of, it will likely occur either way. So first, you will swing Megan, who will get plus 10k due to her skill, boosted by Ivanka. In this example, let's say the attack hits. You will CB1, Megan will go to the bottom, Ivanka would draw you 1 card, and she will give a unit plus 5k. In this case, let's give it to Julian. Then, you will swing Julian. You will CB1. As you are at 4 damage, you will soul charge 2 and call 2. Let's say you ended up soul charging 1 Stephanie and 1 Jamia. He will then allow you to call 2 and get plus 8k, calling the Jamia and the Stephanie. In this case, you would put the Stephanie behind here. The reason for this is you can now use Jamia's skill mid-battle phase to counterblast 1, soul charge 1, and call something, likely the Steve. Then you can swing Jamia, or you can not. He's a 20k, so he will likely hit. Let's say you had to, as you would likely not hit your opponent otherwise. You will then swing Bruce. You will obviously drive check 2, but before that, you will use Bruce's skill to counterblast 1 more, allowing you to stand the Julian, giving the column plus 5k in total, or plus 10k. Julian keeps his plus 8. Steve, as you are in final burst, which counts as final rush, will get plus 5, and then you can attack again. This allows you to do 5 attacks. Of course, you can do more or less with more CB or less CB, but please do this wisely. That is all for my Viamance Bruce deck profile. Viamance Bruce is only about a tier 2 deck right now, but he's, I'd say, mid to mid-high tier 2. He is not the best deck right now. He's not the worst deck right now. He has been getting a few tops here and there in Japan and also in Singapore, and as always, Bruce is now a tiny bit tankier, still fun to play, and always final rushing. Thank you for watching my deck profile. If you have any comments or questions, please leave them below, and I will see you next time.